As the Son of Heaven, he offered the annual sacrifice to heaven at the time of the winter solstice in the geometrically designed temple complex on the Round Hill, near Beijing, the most important religious act in ancient China. Thus, from the human need for orientation, once a pure religion of the heaven developed. The precondition for this would also have been fulfilled in Egypt. Here, the art of orientation was at least as highly developed as in China. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built by Pharaoh Khufu, deviates only slightly from the cardinal points. Its baseline, which is 230 meters long, does not stand out from the horizontal by more than a few centimeters at any point. Some pharaohs called themselves the sons of the sun. Like the Son of Heaven in China, they aligned the temple buildings, even carried out the astronomical measurements with their own hands. But the Egyptians were far too attached to their ancestral gods to have founded a pure celestial religion. It took a long time until the priests succeeded in enforcing the doctrine that all local deities were only another manifestation of the sun god Ra. When Pharaoh Akhenaten tried to impose an abstract sun cult on the people, he failed. The Egyptians were much more bound to their traditions than the Chinese. For Egyptians, time was not a constant. It was relative, so to speak. Not theoretically, as with Einstein, but tangibly in daily life. Every hour had a different length. The hours at noon were longer than in the evening and in the morning. And also, in each place the time ran differently. That is unimaginable for us today. For us, time is a steady flow. We consider this concept of time to be the only conceivable one. It's hard to imagine that there were ever people who felt otherwise. In fact, however, all earlier cultures had a different concept of time than we have today. There is no innate or inherent time consciousness anyway. The change of day and night creates a rhythm of life, but none of us really thinks about it. It is probably only the seasons, with their various demands on life, that have created the idea of recurring sequences. The need to count days, that is, to measure periods of time, already presupposed highly developed social living. And there was already an astronomical science when people began to divide the daily routine and thus create a consciously perceivable time. The first time marker was noon, the moment of the shortest sun shadow. One of the oldest scientific instruments, the gnomon, the shadow stick, was invented in order to find it precisely. From there, probably a long process led to the sundial. With it, the concept of time came into being. It was not invented, but literally created with the hands. Only the moving on of the sun shadow on the divided underground changed an unconscious feeling into a more and more comprehensible concept. And now the main thing. For the inventors of the sundial, the Egyptians, time did not pass evenly, but sometimes slower, and sometimes faster. For a reason that could be considered a coincidence. They divided the board of the sundial into equal sections. The instinct for symmetry seems to have kicked in again here. But the sun passes over the sky in an arc, therefore its shadow passed through the lines on the board in different periods of time. The 6 hours of the Egyptian day had different lengths. Moreover, they got different length again, depending on the season. The winter hours became 1/7 shorter than the summer hours. How ingrained this idea was to the Egyptians is shown by an unbelievable fact. They even set their water clocks to changing hour lengths. At the running water they had the continuous time flow directly before eyes. But no, with an unbelievable effort of skill and intellect they made a highly complicated device out of a simple one, and an artificial irregularity out of a regular natural function, only to achieve the only correct time flow in their opinion, namely, the irregular time flow of their sundials. Until that succeeded, centuries must have passed. This is evident from the epitaph of Amenemhet, seal keeper of the 18th dynasty around 1500 BC, during the reign of Amenhotep I. In this, it is emphasized that Amenemhet had built the perfect water clock that worked correctly. It was not even necessary to have several water flows to indicate the changing lengths of the hours. With a single outflow, it was even able to change the hours according to the seasons. The Egyptian time measurement with the relative time concept remained exemplary for the whole antiquity. Athens, for example, was very proud of its Tower of the Winds, which, apart from a weather vane, carried no less than 8 sundials, visible from all directions and even from great distance. They supposedly measured the time to within 3 or 4 minutes, which seems a bit strange today, considering that the number of minutes in each hour was different. But the Greeks must have felt as comfortable and reassured in their fluctuating time conditions as we do at the sight of our blinking displays. In contrast, other ancient cultures coped with two contradictory concepts of time without getting out of joint. The Babylonians and Chinese did not align their water clocks with the sundials but let them run evenly. So, they had two kinds of hours, alternating hours, and hours of the same length, which apparently did not confuse them at all.